2018 brought us the Retrotink-2X by Mike Chi, an affordable, zero-lag line doubler that I reviewed as the missing S-Video solution for modern televisions. That description is only the tip of the iceberg. Now with $89, the Retrotink-2X is one of the few affordable devices that accepts composite and component video in both 240p and 480i modes, and line doubles them to 480p through HDMI. A signal that every modern TV will accept and upscale to its native resolution. This review is for the Retrotink-2X Pro, a $130 device created by Mike Chi that shares many of its core features with his original Retrotink-2X while adding a slew of under-the-hood improvements, such as a high-quality 4-layer PCB with improved grounding for lower noise and quality of life usability improvements, which will be discussed in this video. To keep things simple, in this review, the original Retrotink-2X will be referred to as the Classic, while the Pro will obviously be called the Pro. For an in-depth review of the Classic, please check the video description for links to my prior video reviews, as well as Retro RGBs, Scarlet Sprites, Retrotech Selects, and others that I found useful. I highly suggest watching the prior videos, as once you're familiar with the Classic, it will make the differences to the Pro model much more obvious for you, and you'll be able to make a decision as to which device is right for you. Let's begin with the physical differences. The Pro is about 1 1/3 the size of the Classic, coming in at just under 4 inches compared to the Classic coming in at just 3 inches. It's easier to picture the Pro as the size of a standard deck of playing cards or around the size of a standard Genesis cartridge. The most obvious change from the Classic to the Pro is the layout of its ports. Component ports are now all together on the same side on the bottom of the unit. The green component port also doubles as the yellow composite RCA jack. This may seem like a minor loss, but since the instructions specifically state that users shouldn't connect more than one video source at a time, this should not pose a problem for the end user. The S-Video port is now located on the left side of the Pro and is located directly next to the red and white RCA audio ports. Overall, this layout should allow for a clean-looking setup with very little strain on your cables. The built-in LED light now changes color, which makes it much easier to know what input you're using, with common sense choices such as yellow for composite, white for S-Video, and green for component. The top of the Retrotink-2X Pro now features a full-sized HDMI port with better ESD electrostatic discharge protection. This is a welcome improvement over the mini HDMI featured in the original. No more dongles or less common cables needed. Just plug in any standard quality HDMI cable and get to gaming. To the left of the HDMI cable is the micro USB port that powers the Pro. While it may be somewhat disappointing not to see a USB-C port on a device newly released in 2020, that doesn't mean that there aren't any improvements over the Classic model. The major benefit is that the Retrotink-2X Pro is firmware upgradable through its micro USB port. This is a welcome improvement, as the Classic required users to mail in their unit to a participating technician for a cost, or a PC/PSC programmer and a Tag Connect cable if they chose to do it themselves. Another notable improvement is that the Pro has better power input filtering, which makes it less sensitive to bad USB power adapters and includes improved protection against surges. Located on the right side of the HDMI port are the input and filter buttons. Unlike the Retrotink-2X Classic, the Retrotink-2X Pro input button is solely dedicated to choosing a video input. The filter button is now a dedicated button for choosing between 3 different video modes depending on your preference. Mode 1 will simply show a purely transcoded picture. It's best for pixel lovers. Mode 2 will apply a smoothing filter over the picture. Some may prefer this mode as it smooths out the rough edges on low resolution 2D and 3D artwork. Mode 3 is an all-new scanline filter added to the Pro that is not available on the Classic. This was a highly requested feature and one that I mentioned was missing in my original review of the Classic. In my opinion, it's great that Mike Chi listened to his customer feedback and added this function. That said, the new scanline function does have a few caveats. First, they really darken the picture, so you may need to adjust your TV's picture setting in order to compensate for the loss of brightness. If you own any of the excellent HD Retrovision component cables, they have a built-in brightness toggle which may also help. Second, they are intended to be used in 2X mode to look correct. According to Mike, pass-through scan lines shouldn't be used since they effectively show 120p. He's correct. I tried it for the sake of science and it's not a pretty sight. Just don't do it. Speaking of pass-through mode, this function now has a dedicated toggle switch on the right hand side of the device. Down for pass-through, up for 2X. As a reminder, the Retrotink does not support 480p or higher input due to fundamental chipset limitations. The second switch, located just slightly above the mode switch, is the comb switch. This allows for users to choose between the auto and retro modes. The default is retro mode, but if you experience issues or plan to capture and digitize video from a device such as VCR, then auto mode may help as it was designed with slightly improved composite recording in mind. On my early unit, the toggle switches don't protrude outside of the case, and I don't keep long nails, so I had to use the tip of a mechanical pencil in order to change the switch. Hopefully this will be fixed in later batches as the consumer version may have a slightly different or updated case design. Those are all the improvements for the Retrotink-2X Pro along with their improvements and modifications. While end users may enjoy a cleaner audio and video fidelity due to these improvements, the gaming performance is identical to the classic device at about 53 microseconds. If you're not familiar with that term, a microsecond is equivalent to 1/millionth of a second or 1,000th of a millisecond. It takes about 16 milliseconds for a frame. This makes the Retrotink products essentially lagless devices themselves. Any lag experience will depend on your TV and its scaler. If you're using a wireless controller, that may also add some lag to your setup. That said, this is something that is a specialty of Bob from Retro RGB, and I'm happy to say that he will be joining me on this review for his take on the Retrotink-2X Pro. So, take it away, Bob.
I think it's important to always keep the goal of the original Retrotink and the Pro in mind. These devices were designed to be the easiest and most compatible ways to get your classic consoles onto digital displays or capture cards. And please remember that even if your TV does have some of the same inputs as these devices, it's very common for TVs to misinterpret the signals from games as TV signals. And that adds a pretty annoying and headache-inducing flicker, as well as usually adds a ton of lag. Now, there's other excellent options out there, but none of them are plug-and-play and offer the same compatibility at the same price range. So as a result, I would say that the 2X Pro is the best choice for almost everybody out there just looking to connect their classic consoles to modern displays. Now, I say almost because this device is missing one input that's commonly used in retro gaming, RGB SCART. Luckily, the creator of the Retrotink-2X just released a device called the 2X SCART that does exactly what you would expect. RGB in at 240p or 480i, out to HDMI 480p. It also offers scan lines and the filter, but no pass-through options, as it's meant to just be a basic device for people that want the easiest RGB solution out there. I just released a video on it, and I also have a video on the original Retrotink-2X with an interview with the creator, Mike Chi, so please feel free to check both of those out.
Thanks, Bob. That was incredibly informative, as usual. If you're interested in Bob's work and retro gaming news, then visit retrorgb.com or search RetroRGB on YouTube. His info will also be linked below. So Ray, you might ask, what are your final thoughts on the Retrotink-2X Pro? Well, they haven't changed at all from last year. If you own classic consoles that require composite, SVIDEO, or component, and you want an easy plug-and-play solution that's compatible, affordable, and now comes with scan lines, then the Retrotink-2X Pro should be on your short list of considerations. It's also one of the few line doublers that happens to work with Elgato products with minimal fuss. With the ossc due to receive a price drop soon, the question will be, do you want supreme video quality that requires a lot of maintenance and has a few compatibility problems? Or are you okay with the good enough solution that just works? If you have money to burn or just need every connection under the sun, then why not both? Since the two devices can work in tandem, it's still a win-win situation. I also want to thank Mike Chi for sending me this unit for review. There were no strings attached or expectations set from him, he just sent it to me. He simply has enough confidence in his product for it to stand on its own. And in this case, it definitely did. On a final note, I like to bring up some interesting scenarios for 6th and 7th generation consoles like the Wii and the Dreamcast. The Retrotink-2X Pro in particular, with the scanline functionality, can make games like King of Fighters 99 and 99 Evolution that don't work with the VGA box a lot more enjoyable to play. So you can get something like a cheap VGA switch box like Retrobits that is just too bright, and it'll actually work out in your favor, because once you turn on the scanline function that darkens the picture, the over brightness of the Retrobit box actually makes the scanlines look pretty nice, as you can see here. With the Wii, you can play those virtual console games in 240p, line doubled to 480p with scanlines, which looks pretty cool, as you'll also see here. Just some food for thought. I would love to see any other experiments that you guys try once you start getting units in your hands, and maybe we can start sharing ideas, see what we can actually use these for that might not be for their intended purpose. Just some thoughts. So that's it for this review of the Retrotink-2X Pro. Thanks again to Bob of RetroRGB, Mike Chi of Retrotink, and of course all of you for watching. Of course, if you like this content, you know what to do. Subscribe, thumbs up, hit that bell, and share the video. This is Raycommend, and I'll see you guys next time.